He's trying to get the rest of them to play with this. And they're totally disinterested.
All City might be running a little late.
Institute.
Okay.
Institute.
It's
Should we get
6:02.
started without him?
It's 6:02.
Yes.
You want to get started without him?
That's fine.
Yeah, because he can.
She said he's running late.
Okay, why don't you call the room door and then get started?
This meeting's called to order. Certification of compliance with open meeting law.
I think it's pretty obvious.
It's okay. Roll call.
Call,
Here.
Brett,
Here.
Nature,
Here. Emergency management plan, aviation flu issue.
Not aviation.
Not aviation, avian.
Yeah.
I wish it was aviation.
Okay, since I'm the emergency management contact on the town board, I'll just start out with this. And this segment of tonight's meeting, the first thing on the agenda here, is to explain to you what the county and town government know about the avian flu outbreak at Cold Spring Farm and how it has been and is being and will be handled, to the best of our knowledge, and the agencies that are actually in charge of it. The one thing I want everyone to be clear on and understand is that neither the town nor the county have control over this issue. You have a handout called Chapter ATCP 51. It's the Livestock Facility Siting Rules. That's the state rules that took the control of this issue away from local governments and vested it in the state. So the only thing the town was able to do, and we had help from the county, is try to delineate a truck route, because the town does have a truck or a weight limit ordinance, especially, and it's in effect from the 1st of March to the 1st of May, right?
Yes.
Larry, that's our ordinance. So, and we worked very hard to try to get a route laid out and enforced, and it was a challenge. We understand that there are people here that are justifiably unhappy with this entire situation. However, this meeting is not a forum for venting. It's being held to share with you what the town and the county have been able to find out, and I hope you'll respect this. Everyone should have a copy of the questions that have been asked and answered as of today, and if after this hearing, you have more questions, you can certainly ask them questions. And then we have a public comment period. After the meeting gets started, we have a public comment period. You can make public comments at that time if you wish to, and please limit them to 2 minutes so that everybody has a chance to speak. So 2 minutes for public comment. This first section is not about public comment. This is to get the questions answered, okay? This is Donna Hogan. She is the Jefferson County Emergency Management Director, and Paul Milbrath, the county sheriff, is going to be here, but he's running a little late. So I'm going to turn this over to Donna right now.
I just want to make sure there's 2 handouts over there of the questions. There's the frequently asked questions that we have from the state, and those are fairly generic questions that they were asking. And then the other one is Jefferson County questions that we received from residents that we identified and we got answers for. So I'm not sure what or where everybody is with relationship to knowing what happened at Cold Spring Egg Farm or where it is right now. At the current moment, they have transported all of the chickens to the compost site, and they're hauling manure right now. So they're in the process of composting all the chickens, and I was told that once all the chickens were there on site, it would take about 30 days for them to compost. They're going to have to be turning these compost piles every 2 weeks, so to help with the composting, but that's what I know there right now. And I know you probably had an opportunity to answer or read some of the questions, but I don't know, what questions you might have with me that I can try to answer.
So can you take a quick moment and just scan the questions and answers that are on here?
document on the website?
The frequently asked
The
questions are,
Jefferson County one?
not the Jefferson County
Because
one, no.
this link is a little bit,
Some of them, well, right, some of the links that were identified, but the question, the answer below those links indicate that they're really not applicable to
Okay.
what we're doing right now.
okay.
I have a question. After the composting is complete and it says that it can be removed from the premises, is there any stipulation on where that compost can be taken after that?
No. He is free to do whatever he wants with the compost.
So that includes selling it to other farmers
If he wishes to do so.
and nothing can be regulated?
It's nutrient-rich soil. It doesn't have the virus in it at all, so it should be quite good soil.
Reference number 7 here, and possibly a little of 8. Now, I'll tell you where I live. I live right on the curve at the corner of Calkins Road and 106. And watch 250 trucks a day go by the house, going and coming. And when they're going northbound, they're hauling. And not all those trucks were covered up.
For the chickens.
I'll tell you what, I've sat there and my wife's sitting right here, and some of those trucks that have those,
The tarps.
the tarps on them,
Well, not always.
are just flying up and down, going down. Several of them I saw. So when I read this, that's not accurate.
Right, we had several conversations with, I did not alter any of their answers.
Right, I'm just
So,
telling,
yeah.
addressing that.
Yes,
that's all.
we had talked to them on that on several occasions. And, you know, it was sort of like, we say the tarps aren't tied down, you say the tarps are tied down, what next?
Right, well, I'm just letting you know.
Yep,
Watch the whole thing, so.
yeah, I appreciate that.
The response to number 1, combination of private, state, federal resources, does that mean there's no cost to the county or the town?
No cost to the county or town.
Except road repairs. Correct,
Yeah,
but that would be public funds.
Except for what?
Road repairs, yeah.
Whatever you three do, you need to do something on getting some money back for the roads, because they just hammered them.
That's a different,
Okay, I'm sorry, but you said that, and that's why I brought it up.
yes.
Are they watching, I mean, obviously they're watching the S&R facility on Tamarack, but, you know, God forbid, say something happened and they end up having to depopulate that farm, will those birds go to that location?
At this point in time, no.
Do they have a plan for that?
They're not required to have a plan for that. I asked the state about that, and it's on page,
Or was that number 19, the SWAT plan?
no, number 22. Number 21 and 22. Actually 22, so 20, 21, and 22.
Is there a way to have them, they can be, to be required to have a plan for future times? Like what do we do to have them require a plan for anything down the road?
That would probably go back to that, law that you just passed out.
oh, at Cap 51.
Yeah, going through that again and getting that reinstated.
If there's no risk of the contamination of the groundwater, if there's no concern about that, why do they have to get transported off-site? Why couldn't they do their composting on-site?
They just did say, when I had asked that question, that it didn't meet the requirements for composting. They did compost some of them on site, The initial,
In the barn.
in the barn, they did compost some of them on site in the barn. The only thing that they told me was the requirements for composting, as far as the land, water table, soil types, was not conducive to composting.
I think that's kind of a non-answer from them.
It's quite possible.
How deep is the water table there?
I'm not sure if I have that information.
Pretty shallow up there,
Well, it's, I mean, it's
a couple feet.
a muck farm,
Which
so
site?
it's probably a very
Which site does he?
high water table. Do you want to know, which site do you want to know where the water is, on the composting site?
Composting site is, we're right around the corner.
Compost.
Okay, so
Zion Road site.
it says, how has Jefferson County compost site chosen? On your frequently asked questions, it's on page 2, the bottom of page 2. And there's a listing of information on the top of page 3. Did everybody get a well test, that wanted a well test?
Oh, that's another thing, they're having to pay $27 when they mail those, because there's no other way to guarantee it is their test.
Oh, okay,
So somehow they need to get reimbursed for what they're having to spend.
all right, I didn't know that. They just said.
That,
they
some,
were-
I just found it out today.
So they can send it back without paying $27?
If they do, then there's no guarantee it's gonna get there in time to do anything.
You only have 48 hours to get it tested from the time you put the date, time on it and everything. And so they recommend at the post office that we pay the $27, $26.94 or something to make sure we get it on time. A lot of other people were doing it, so we went ahead and did it.
Otherwise, the mailing
And then
is
we had to
supposed
do
to
it
be
in
free.
6 more weeks, they were saying, or something.
They said you would get another kit, they told us in 6 weeks. I sure wouldn't test it again in 6 weeks. I
That
would,
seems too soon.
yeah, that'd be way too soon.
You better just look at that, so it was cheaper for me. It's nerve-wracking when you drive past and you see all these black racks, you probably sit in my place if I want, but everyone's in hazmat suits walking around on top of big piles of compost or whatever it is. It kind of just makes me nervous, just up the street from me. They're wearing hazmat suits. Should I be at my yard, or should I worry about my dog or anything? Or?
We are going to get air monitors to set around the site. Those are coming from EPA, am I correct?
We've requested them from EPA.
So we will hope to get those very soon. And
What will those be monitoring?
there's a list of things, and I can't rattle it off the top of my head, but it has to do with bacteria,
Some
viruses,
funguses,
funguses,
bacteria, the virus,
molds.
molds.
There was something else. What it was now, but
What about
basically,
the smell?
yeah, we can do
I
that.
appreciate there's a smell, yes. I understand
You
that
have no
that's,
idea.
I,
Even
I,
walk outside.
Have you been out there, Ben?
yes, yes, I have. I've been out there a couple times. So I do understand. I don't know, obviously, but I do understand your issues that you're having.
Stunk bad enough when they sprayed the field all the time in the middle of like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, 6, when it was dark out. While they're shooting the water up in the air, I'd watch it, the wind hit their truck with it.
That's where they put their red wash.
I'd be on my way to work, it'd be dark, and they'd be going out along the field with their truck, spraying it way up in the air, and it was hitting their truck because of the wind. But it stunk all the time, as long as the wind was right, I didn't smell it. means it went the right direction, especially on New Year's Day.
Right.
Are there any more?
What is that property out there where they're doing the composting, what do they normally use that for? Or is that set aside for this type of thing?
No, it was just a field.
They use it for spraying all their junk.
They spray all their egg
They
wash.
put their egg wash out
Egg
there.
wash,
Dan.
but what's full of eggs? Poop.
Right.
Broken eggs.
And they go past my house and feathers flying everywhere and parts and pieces I find on the road on Hooper. So it's not just that that's going out of there. I put up with it. I never said nothing because of the fact that I figured it's been like that for years before I ever moved out there. Farmers have been spreading stuff in their fields for years, but I know at one time I was told somebody was saying that they're supposed to be spraying it down to the ground, not up in the air. I don't know if that's true, I don't know. So I've always just kind of let it go, not worried about it. I'm used to smelling, cow manure and everything else. That's a little worse, it's a little bit more like pig crap, but pig farm it smells like in my yard during the summer especially. But it's not every day, it's just when the air is blowing towards you, it could be quite a few days sometimes. I'd rather smell cow manure than horse manure than that.
That's true.
Is there any governing body that's done any investigation as to whether there was anything negligent that could have caused this?
For the avian influenza?
Correct.
This particular one, you mean, Jim?
Yes. It's the only one we're talking about.
Absolutely not. I mean, they didn't do anything to incur avian influenza.
No, he means, is there an investigative body looking over what they're doing now for violations?
Or what they did then to allow this to happen.
To allow the avian flu to get in?
Correct.
Oh,
No, they haven't done anything to allow the avian flu to get in. I mean, it's propagated by geese flying over, pooping on the yard, ducks or the chickens getting into it. It can happen in any place, anytime.
But I thought that the birds that were on the farm, I thought those were not out in the open to mix with transient ducks and geese and whatever.
But anything can carry it in.
So they're not protected from outside birds putting the flu into the contamination. In other words, they cannot, could the chickens be contaminated by birds that don't live there?
They
Like geese?
Anything?
Yes.
Okay. Because I thought that building was pretty closed up as far as anything getting in there to do this.
This is Paul Milbrook, County Sheriff, been helping us to save whatever roads we could.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, avian influenza, I don't think they can pinpoint how it got in there.
Okay?
People can carry it in on their shoes.
Mice can carry it in?
So I don't think that they can pinpoint how it actually occurred.
Does anyone know how the fire started? Unrelated to the avian flu.
No idea, no idea.
No idea.
And I don't know about the fire. I'm just
Well, that can be from just dust.
working with the chickens.
Okay?
Any more questions? This is Sheriff Milbrath, and if you have any questions for him, he had to do with the traffic. And that's something we all struggled with, was the traffic. So,
It was pretty quiet today, they must be done, huh?
They're winding down, I know that. They were hoping to have the vast majority of everything done last week. And I found that out from a trucker that I stopped.
It's dark out there when they're still working out there and everything. Big lights and everything out there.
I'm sure they're still going
Well,
at it.
7 a.m., maybe a little before, till, I don't know what time at night. Truck constant. But today I said, hey, I noticed it's a little quieter. I never noticed it every coffee.
I know that they were winding down.
There was no trucks today by the house.
Okay.
I didn't think so. trucks blasting in the wind on their way there to dump, you know, the back, I don't break down, nice to break down, I'm just saying, he's right, they did have, sometimes the tarps weren't holding down. Saw it on Highway E when I was at the stop sign, they were on their way there,
Okay, well, I know that when
going up CI.
we dealt with some of them at some of the intersections when we rerouted them, we actually asked them, sorry if you can't hear me, sometimes my voice isn't that
That's
strong.
all good. That's not you.
We actually asked the officers to tell them, tie your straps down, make sure you're tight, stay off the town road, and slow down. If you're speeding, tell everybody you know that drives a truck, slow down. Because,
Fly through there right past
yeah, I actually was out the day he called me because we were short-staffed and I had a complaint on one of the roads of the trucks. And I went out there myself, 2 different occasions for an hour and a half, for one time in about 20 minutes. I really didn't have any truck speeding. I finally had one that was going fast enough that I stopped him and pulled him over. And I told him the same thing. You know, these are the issues citizens have. You know, do your part, tell your friends, we're out here. And hopefully that, it seemed to help with a bunch of them because.
Who put the signs up on, say no trucks?
The town did.
Then
Town
they
did.
flipped them over on top of the, in the ditch.
The truckers threw them.
Somebody didn't like them.
Yeah.
We had citizen volunteers in the town. Leslie Ott watched, we had a couple of other people that watched. They wrote down trucking numbers and names, and we called the trucking companies, and that seemed to get some attention. We didn't know what else to do, you know. We tried stopping trucks and talking to them, and they were rude, and I'm sure you've heard that too.
They don't look at it,
Yeah, and instead, calling the trucking company offices seemed to be effective. So we didn't know what else to do. It's
I wanna
a
say
mess.
something quick, just thank you though, you guys that are trying to make it get done right and keeping an eye on things. Sounds like you have done, I don't know.
We've done all I think we can do.
Yeah.
Got a question back here.
I take it there's no regulation at all on mufflers and the use of Jake brakes. Because they have, I mean, you know, I don't think it's very funny because we've
No,
got
it's
10
not.
hours a day for 3 weeks now. And they don't have any mufflers and then they use their Jake brakes all the time. So some of the trucks are quieter, so obviously that you can put a muffler on. But I take it there's no law that governs it all, because this is the age of deregulation brought to us by our state legislature. And I take it there's no law at all that says they have to put any kind of muffler on or regulates when they have to use their Jake brakes and when they can't. Is that right?
Mufflers are required, however, jake braking, that you actually have to ordinance against.
An ordinance against?
You have to
You
ordinance.
have to ordinance against it. You
Do
have
we-
to create an ordinance against it.
We don't have that ordinance, do we?
Town.
No.
Does the county? No.
No.
Some areas do have
Some
it.
areas do it, where we have that, we can enforce it, and we have done that. Town of Jefferson has it coming off 26, and I believe the city has it coming in on N, so we're able to enforce those. But you have to have an ordinance in place for jake braking.
A little follow-up, but what's the muffler ordinance? Is it glass packs required? I mean, what's the limit on muffler? There doesn't seem to be any. Are all these trucks illegal?
I highly doubt they're all illegal because we end up enforcing, our truck enforcement group, they're a full staff, we're up,
What's the law governing mufflers?
every vehicle has a muffler.
Well, these all probably have mufflers, but they're like glass packs, so do they have to have any kind of muffler or just any old muffler?
I can't tell you that, I'll be honest with you.
There's no regulation on decibels, is there?
Yeah, well, there's something. State Patrol was out there, wasn't it?
Yes, we had them out there as well. We contacted them and asked for assistance with their portable scales, because we knew that would eliminate the big trucks that we believed were coming, and as soon as we got that and had them parked, no more big truck.
And sir, just to let you know, if there was any, like, real loud trucks, the state patrol would have done something about that. They've got all that equipment. don't they?
They weren't there that much.
Well, I'm with you, I'm right there at Hawkins and 106, and I didn't mean to laugh at you about Jake brakes, but it's forced my wife out of the house, it was so bad, so that's why I trucked it, because it was terrible at our house too. So, I'm with you 100%.
More questions?
Why is all this information coming out and being shared with people now? Why wasn't it done before all of this started?
Before
Well,
the
like
avian
when-
flu started?
When they knew that they were gonna have to dispose of almost 3 million chickens, and they knew where the site was gonna be, and they knew the process, that should have been shared with the community
We've
members
been
right
asking
away.
and asking and asking, and some of these questions Donna only got an answer to today. Even though the questions were asked weeks ago, we could not get answers,
We even asked them to come today,
and they
and they
refused.
refused to come today.
2 weeks or 3 weeks ago.
Who's they?
3.
Right,
DADCAP, USDA, DNR.
so they don't have to answer to anybody.
Not us.
Not us.
Not us.
Winona, Donna, and I were on the phone call with them 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
Monday night.
Yeah.
And each one of us asked them to set up a meeting with the town residents. Because we said, if people have answers, it's gonna, you may not like it, but at least you know what's going on, you know when it's starting, you know when it's end. It gives you something to work with and a face. I know you, I can talk to you, at least if I'm on the phone, I know who I'm dealing with. That didn't happen.
No. And they let it be known that the only thing the town had any say on was the load limit ordinance. That was the only thing we were allowed any input on at all.
And that was after they had hauled, the town didn't even know they were hauling all this crushed limestone. They must have hauled 100 loads of that. They were hauling for 4 days before the town even knew
Before
they were
even
doing it.
anybody knew about it.
Before anybody knew.
I called you, remember?
News said it was done, a week and a half before it was. Somehow they knew it was done, they said, but it wasn't, the chickens were even delivered yet.
Right.
Well, moving forward, is there gonna be any limitations on the use of that site? Is it like in 6 months, they're gonna be driving stuff through there, distributing whatever's been composted? You know, could it be sold in 2 years without restrictions because it was just composted, not a landfill?
I think they probably could, according to the way, if you read the whole.
According to 22.
Yeah.
Yep, number 22.
And
Sounds like they really don't have to do anything to it. They can do whatever they want.
so I think the answer is that people need to go to the state legislature and ask for some rules to govern this, so that this doesn't happen again, and all of a sudden we go through this same darn thing again next year when avian flu hits again. And it's not a matter of if it's gonna hit, it's when. It's here, and it's all over the state, and it's all over the country. And I cannot find another record of them composting off-site. I can find out that they have composted outside next to the buildings, but not 8.5 road miles away or 5 miles as the crow flies. Maybe it's there, but I can't find it through an internet search.
So I have a question. So I'm a little concerned that, you know, they're composting 2.7 million chickens. It's not 200 chickens, it's not 270,000 chickens, it's 2.7 million. Okay. I live pretty much 300 yards from the site, and I guess everyone I spoke with agrees that they should probably be burned or cremated versus put into the ground. Now, I don't know if this is correct, but I was told that they missed the deadline for the application to do so. Do they have 5 minutes to apply?
I'm not familiar
I don't
with that at all.
understand how something of this scale, that application deadline couldn't have been pushed back or re-looked at versus just dumping it in the ground and not telling them.
I agree with you, but we had no control over that.
I had to say what I had to say.
I think your point is well taken, though. I don't think we were even given that, told that that was an option. I mean,
No, We never even saw anybody, them apply for a permit or anything else for that.
I'm not saying this is you guys. it's
No,
just what I
I'm not
heard.
sure that they did. I think what they did early on possibly, and this is just rumor, is that they were interested in getting a, what do you call it, where they cremate them? An incinerator, and there's 3 million birds here. There's way too many to get a commercial incinerator that can do that. And so they gave up on that. We were also told, you were told early on, that they were going to haul those birds in sealed trucks, and that they were getting these trucks from somewhere in Virginia. Instead, they came in dump trucks with tarps. So, you know, we'd find out one thing, or Donna would get one message, and 2 days later, everything changed again. So it's a poster child for how to
And I know it was frustrating for you too, because I would get questions, and I would get those answers, and then I would tell you those answers, and like Winona said, 2 days later, it changed. So confusion on your part, you know, not knowing what actually is going on. I feel bad because I'm trying to get the information to you as best I can, and they're changing the rules all the time. And so I kept in contact with a couple of you to make sure that I was trying to update as much as possible and trying to get these questions answered.
Can we assume that SNR was permitted to have 2.7 million birds, and now that they've had this happen, can whoever monitors that roll it back so that they don't have so many birds should it happen again?
The only answer we got to that was that it's up to DNR and the CAFCO process. Number 18. And I also just recently found out for the answer for number 19, they said we had asked that question several times and never received a response. But they told me today that the flock plan is being reviewed by the USDA, and they should get it back this week for their signature.
The what plan?
Fire escape after the building burns
Flock
down.
A flock plan?
Yeah.
I have a two-part question. Were the road bans removed early to allow them to truck them off-site? And if they weren't, could they have been kept on to not allow them to transport 8 miles?
They can be kept off the town roads where they had no permission. We gave them permission to go from CI down there, very north, a few feet of Zion Road, into the site. Come out, and then once they're empty, they're not, you know, they're not overweight. So that's what they were supposed to do. However they got to the north end of Zion Road was not the town's issue. Instead, they ran every direction on Hooper Road, they ran up Zion Road, it was like ants coming to an anthill. They went everywhere. They went down Z, Pine Drive, they went across Pine Drive to get to Hooper Road.
And they were looking for, when they were transporting the carbon, they already had the contracts signed for the carbon drivers, where they were gonna get it. But they wouldn't tell me the addresses. They wanted me to tell them roads that they could get from north, south, east, or west to Zion and Hooper. So they were supposed to be coming in on 18, east and west, 26, north and south. But they didn't do that. And that's all I could tell them as far as where they're coming from, because they only asked me those 4 directions.
So the answer about who pays for all this is quite vague, obviously. Any idea what the combination of private is SNR gonna pay like 2% and us taxpayers pay 98%? Is it gonna be almost all taxes that pay for, I mean, this has gotta be unbelievably expensive. So are we gonna pay for it all and SNR's scot-free?
I think it's gonna require an open records request to get the information.
Or what?
It's gonna require an open records request to get the information. They're not gonna give it to us otherwise.
Do you have any hint?
No. I know historically, the producer would have been paid for the chickens, for his loss, as far as who's paying for the carbon and who's paying for, you know, the composting itself, the carbon and all, and the chicken hauling. I don't know. We're as much in the dark as you are, but I think it's worth an open records request.
So it's possible that I'm paying for these trucks to go back to
Very
the house.
possible.
Very possible.
Probable.
There is.
You can bet money, you got a lot of money on it.
Yeah. There, you had another question back there somewhere. Did somebody else back in the corner have a question?
I have a question about what you just said about who's paying for this. They're paying SNR or they're paying who? SNR is getting paid by their insurance company?
Well, they're getting paid by USDA for the bird loss, I believe,
Well, why would they be getting paid for that?
because it's a disaster loss. Anybody else?
I just hope that all of you who have had interactions and communications with attempts to try and get information from them, and sounds like you're getting the runaround, I hope that you're all keeping really good documentation of who you're talking to, when you're talking to them, what was said to you, what you're telling other people, because I just see a lot of stuff. I mean, this is a recipe for disaster, and if people need to go back and go into records, I just think it's really wise to keep those documents.
I agree.
We were using that from 2015. We were using what had happened in 2015 and trying to apply it today.
To the context.
And it was, we had issues in 2015 of communication, but the lines were certainly a lot better then than they were now. And what they had us doing was, now, even to this day, I cannot take your answers and I cannot get them answered for questions, and I cannot get them answered for you. You have to call a number, and you have to ask them your question, and they will give you the answer.
As a,
Yes.
yeah, that's just changed.
I mean, before it was, now I have to I'm the liaison for Jefferson, so I contact another gentleman, he contacts another gentleman, they contact DATCAP, and depending on what the question is, DATCAP disseminates that question to DNR, USDA, or whoever, then they wait until,
Contact their attorney.
what,
Yeah.
Of course.
something, now what did they call them? Experts. Experts, and then they had to wait for those experts to answer that question, then it would funnel back down to DATCAP, then it would funnel back down to the gentleman there, then it would funnel back down to the gentleman to me, and then it would funnel back down to me.
Same documentation.
Sure.
Are we in comment period yet?
Yeah, you could comment, you've been commenting all along, John.
No, those are questions. I mean, my only comment is we can get all the information we want, and what the information is gonna say is there's no regulation. So there's nothing anybody can do, because there's no regulation about things like this. So you can get all the answers that you want 3 years later, and it's gonna say, no, there are no rules. They can do whatever they want because there's no regulation.
So we could be looking at this again if something happens over at the other facility.
I'm sure, I think.
Same thing, same people you ask the questions to, same answers.
Well, I'm sure it won't be the same people. I'm not saying that to be, I'm just telling you, it won't be the same people. Those people will be moved, different jobs, whatever. USDA comes in, people you talk to today are not gonna be the people I talked to on Wednesday.
But the end result will be the same.
Yeah.
We'll be sitting here saying, why weren't our, anything answered?
I believe Winona made a comment before, and honestly, it's a good idea. Now, Don and I are both county employees, or at least we both work for the county, and so we work for you. But the bottom line is, we work county is actually a subsection of the state. But we couldn't even find out what direction or where they were getting materials from so that we could plan better road routes if there was an issue coming from a different direction, correct? Nobody would tell us.
I gave an interview for Channel 4, and they got so angry with me that every meeting I went to after that, they specifically said, this information is not for public use.
Information you got from the state?
Yes.
So
They were mad. They weren't angry, they were mad.
contacting your legislators, your elected officials, to tell them the truth. Tell them how you feel, that these are issues that you're dealing with. Maybe that, I can't tell you it's gonna solve everything, but maybe it'll get somebody to understand that, you know what, your local officials, your town people, you can't get any more local than town government hands-on right there. They're your neighbors. The bottom line is, if we can get this information, there's nobody that would know the roads better than your local officials. We can sit there and could have actually planned better routes, done better things, been helping with this. But we have to have someone that can force the state to say, hey, you know, maybe we can't disseminate everything, I don't know, but I think I've never had problems with people trusting us before.
They had 9 o'clock morning meetings with all the agencies, but Jefferson County couldn't attend.
And the town sure couldn't attend.
We weren't allowed to attend. Then they created a 4 p.m. meeting for Jefferson County with the agencies, but the agencies didn't attend. So I said, we're just Jefferson County, we're one county. And I even promised, I said, if you let me listen, I promise I won't say anything. But I still didn't get on.
So if this happens next February, will you allow the road restrictions to be lifted again?
Well, the only road restriction that was lifted was those few feet, and it wouldn't make any difference. If we hadn't lifted it, I guarantee you, they would have found a way to override us.
Well, and it was 2 things. People were not happy about the number of trucks, and they told us that was our fault, because we didn't increase the weight restriction on the road high enough, so they could do less trucks and a higher weight, and now they have to do more trucks at a lower weight. So that was our fault.
I can tell you what the inspector from the state patrol told me. He said they were exempt. They couldn't enforce the weight restrictions, because I called Mullen and Groen about this whole thing. And the inspector called me back and sent some people down here, whatever day I called. But they could not enforce, because it's a farm. And then I told him, I said, not all of the trucks are hauling out of the farm, they're hauling stone. Because I called and told Larry about that a couple weeks ago on a Monday. And I passed that on, and he said he'd send somebody out, and other people were starting to call and complain too. So, but they're exempt, that's what the inspector told me.
Only for farm purposes.
Right, and
But
that's coming off the farm, but not the other ones hauling
Not
up.
all the other stuff.
Right, exactly.
And there was plenty of that.
Because he wasn't aware of that at that time.
Any more questions? Your suggestions are always welcome. You're free to call me anytime you want. I'm Winona Bradson. I guess I should have introduced us at the beginning, since some of you probably don't know who we are, but this is Laura Lowry, and she's our town clerk. And I'm Winona Bradson, and I'm the supervisor, and I introduced Donna, and I introduced Paul, and Larry Caw is sitting down there on the corner, and Dick Nathrop is at the very end. Larry and I are the town supervisors. So,
I brought business cards, if you would like the business cards.